Today, I'll talk a little bit about my journey into home ownership, but really wanting to have a conversation with you about whether buying a home is right for you, the importance of rental housing. When you make that decision to buy a home, what are some of the considerations? What are your life circumstances? And then moving into the more technical aspects of buying a home, things like mortgaging, home inspections, strata minutes, and then how you go about choosing what home is best for you. My name is Shayne Ramsay. I'm the Chief Executive Officer for BC Housing. BC Housing is the provincial agency in British Columbia responsible for the delivery and administration of affordable and social housing across the province. I have spent my entire career working in housing in the public service, both in Ontario and British Columbia. That's more than 35 years in housing policy, management, administration, and development. My university years in geography and planning taught me that planning is really about people and the relationships we build. I couldn't have guessed back then how complex the delivery of affordable housing would become. Getting into housing was basically, I fell into it. In the summer of 1986, after I had finished my planning degree at the University of Toronto, the economy wasn't great, and so was looking around for employment opportunity. A friend of mine was working at the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing and said they had a contract research officer position available. And so I was fortunate to get that position and then began a 35-year career in housing. My first position was as a contract research officer in the housing ministry in Ontario. And it really began to ignite a bug or ignite a light in me. I hadn't thought about housing as a career, but the more and more that I learned about it, the impacts that housing have on communities, on families, and providing the base that folks need to pursue an education, pursue training, improve your health outcomes. Housing is the base for all of those things, and it really is important that all the actors that are involved in the provision of housing focus on that and making sure that we have the right kind of housing in the right locations for folks across the entire spectrum of need, right from ownership housing right down to government subsidized housing for those folks that can't afford to acquire housing in the private market. Many of you know Canada has some of the highest housing costs in the world, and cities like Vancouver and Victoria are regularly rated as some of the least affordable cities in the world. We have vacancy rates that are always under 1%, so it's both difficult to find and buy ownership housing. It's also very difficult to find good quality affordable rental housing as well. The lack of affordable housing, the lack of supply, impacts everyone from businesses that can't attract the workers they need to increased rates of homelessness. And we see this particularly among our marginalized communities, notably Indigenous people, people of color, and disabled. It really takes an effort to be able to respond to all of the housing needs we have across the spectrum, right from affordable ownership to rental and housing for folks who have not been served by the market and need some form of government subsidized housing. So in addition to the supply of social and affordable housing, BC Housing is also responsible for licensing builders that build housing for sale in British Columbia. We manage the continuing professional development program to ensure that builders are maintaining their licenses and staying up to speed on new building technologies, new environmental technologies, new building systems. And so it really is critical to ensure that we have a good supply and good quality of housing. BC Housing is also a research center of excellence in both building science and construction techniques and issues, but also on consumer education. We have a number of consumer bulletins, a number of consumer publications and research to continue to support consumers as they work through things like their housing journey, the purchase of new homes, but also things like maintenance bulletins, how you maintain your home, what it's like to live in a strata complex where you have that interaction with your neighbors, both with day-to-day management of the building, but also the long-term physical health of the building as well. Being the CEO of BC Housing has been the best position of my career. One of the things that, the main thing that keeps me going day after day is certainly the variety of the work that we do. BC Housing is one of the largest developers of housing in the province, but what the provision of good quality, affordable, accessible, safe housing means to a person's life is what really is the most important to me. The one thing that is one of the biggest highlights of my position is that I can attend openings and hear directly from tenants from affordable rental buildings, from supportive and transition housing buildings, what the provision of housing, what that access to safe, secure housing has meant to them, to their families, to their friends. It really is life-changing, and in many cases, for some of the housing that we do, it is actually life-saving. And so those are the outcomes that keep me driving to do more and more in an organization like BC Housing that can have a tremendous positive impact in the lives of British Columbians. I believe one of the challenges we have as a society has been the commodification of housing. I live in Vancouver's downtown east side and see every day how the lack of safe and affordable housing impacts the lives of our citizens. Home to me is community, a place for close connections with family and friends. It provides the basis for pursuing your needs, whether it be employment opportunities, training, and improved health outcomes and well-being. I grew up in social housing as the oldest of 6 children with a single mom. The housing was very modest. It was a 1,000 square foot, 3-bedroom bungalow with a washroom for the 7 of us. But you know, the housing provided a strong base that I believed allowed the family to stay together and provide that base to pursue education and other needs. Without that housing, I don't know that the family would have been able to stay together, and all of the 6 children were able to pursue their hopes and aspirations. Home is about community and those social connections to family and friends. And we don't know how important those are until you lose them, or they're in jeopardy, or you are having a tough time trying to buy that first home, trying to find affordable rental housing that's close to your family, friends, and your work. For me, the essence of a home is having that safe place, that warm place, that accessible place where you can always go back to, always being nurtured by your family, by your friends, allowing you to have those connections, those inclusive pieces that are all very important, are all critical for us as human beings. The delivery of housing is a very complex system. Many actors from all levels of government to developers, builders, the nonprofit sector. And sometimes, because of that complexity, we often don't focus on the entire housing spectrum and the needs of folks throughout their life. And I think the housing challenges really need a different kind of lens, need all of those parties to come together and look for innovative solutions. We're starting to see some of that with multi-generational laneway housing, opportunities for gentle density in some of our neighborhoods. Density will also help things like sustainability, land use, and importantly, affordability. So beginning to look at those range of options. Also beginning to explore things like co-housing, co-op housing, how those can make better use of our available land resources in the form of increased density, but also creating community affordability within those types of housing developments. So my hope is that more and more we'll see actors coming together and looking for more innovative type solutions and really beginning to push the envelope. Also important as part of this, though, is that it doesn't become an us and them and trying to protect turf through, we see this time and time again, not in my backyard syndrome. I'm okay. We don't want you to come in, even though we know that we need a range of housing options across all levels of need. And it really is about building those inclusive communities, because without those, we won't have the richness that diversity can bring to our neighborhoods. One of the options that BC Housing is pursuing right now is something that we call lock-off suites. A lock-off suite might be a 2 or 3 bedroom unit attached to a 1 bedroom unit, and depending, each are self-contained suites, but depending on where a family or a household is within its life journey, we may need an extra bedroom. That extra bedroom may be for an elderly parent that we're caring for. It may be for another child as the family grows. That's just another type of innovation that I think can help to address the housing needs as households evolve over their lifespan, and providing those kinds of opportunities so that we can age in place. We can have that larger family. We can care for a parent or an aunt or an uncle. And so I think just continuing to push the boundaries and look for more innovation, and not just the typical single family home or the typical condo. Let's look at broader ranges of options that are more inclusive and can address the needs, the entire life cycle needs of our households. Before considering what home to buy, I think it really is important for you to first decide if home ownership is right for you. In Canada, about 70% of households own their own homes. The other 30% are mostly rental. In Metro Vancouver, approximately 36% of people rent their homes, and that number jumps to about 50% in the city of Vancouver. The stigma of rental housing is very real, and I think it comes about for a number of reasons. For decades, both federal and provincial governments have really pushed the holy grail of ownership. Our tax programs really incentivize home ownership. Our mortgage loan insurance policies are there to protect financial institutions when they make loans to home purchasers. We have not paid the same kind of attention to create good quality, accessible, affordable rental housing. And as the rental housing stock has aged, it has become more marginalized. It has deteriorated, and that always goes just to reinforce the stigma associated with rental housing. The issue we have, though, is even that stock of rental housing is now aged. There is not much of it. Vacancy rates are traditionally well under 1%, which means it's very hard to get into the rental market because of the lack of supply. We haven't done a good job in North America and in Canada of creating rental housing as a viable option. Good quality, safe, accessible rental housing with security of tenure is a great option for a lot of folks, but we don't have a system in place that has allowed that rental housing to be developed at a sufficient supply that it does become an attractive option. So I think when considering purchase versus rental, you need to look at what are your long-term plans. Do you want to put down roots, or are your goals to move around and experience new places and cities and have a bit more freedom and not be tied to a home. Home ownership carries significant obligations. It's not as easy to pick up and go on vacation. There are maintenance obligations to protect your asset. If you live in a strata, you have obligations around the maintenance of the common property. Another question you should ask yourself, what are your financial goals? Are you looking at the housing as an investment, or are there other opportunities to invest your assets? We have had a low interest rate environment for a number of years now, but there are signs that interest rates are beginning to increase. Are you prepared for the increased rates when that will eventually happen? What is your employment situation? Is it secure? Is the housing near to employment? Or are you going to have to drive to your place of employment? Have we factored in those transportation costs? The cost of car ownership is also increasing. Renting a home is often cheaper, involves less maintenance, but again, security of tenure is always a concern. I've spoken to many potential homeowners and that is a serious concern. Home ownership does provide that security. You're not in danger of losing your home through a rent eviction or another excuse from a property owner who may want the building back to redevelop it. So those are some other considerations as well, especially in North America and in Canada, where we don't have an appropriate supply of affordable rental housing. I know those make choices difficult. Renting probably less of an option for many of us. Then we look at options around home ownership, and just be aware of some of the challenges that come along with owning a new home, whether it be a single-family home, whether it be a condominium in a strata corporation. Those are all types of considerations that have to go into eventually making that decision, which will be, for most of us, for almost all of us, the largest purchase that we will ever make and the largest liability, financial liability, that we will ever take on. Before you make a choice to jump into the ownership market, just make sure that the decision is right for you. Look at, evaluate your financial situation, your hopes and dreams, your goals. Do you want to travel? Are you going to have a family? All of those are very personal and real considerations, but only you can make that ultimate choice. When you make that decision to get into home ownership, my advice would be to really think about what home means to you. Is it community? Is it security? Is it family? Is it an investment? We have tended to treat housing as an investment over many decades, and that has led to challenges around affordability. Then consider your housing needs. Assess your choices. Are you looking at single family? Attaining single family in urban areas is beyond the reach of many of us now. The average cost of a home in Vancouver now is more than $1 million. Do you want to live in a strata, a corporation? Understand the needs understand the needs and obligations that you will have when you move into a strata. Do you want an urban area, a more rural area? What does your commute to work look like? Are you able to work more from home, and how that will impact? And then, really important, determine what you can afford to spend, and really make a conscious choice about that. And that means taking into account your other life goals as well. Do you want to travel? Do you want to put money away in different forms of investments? Children? All of those are really important decisions when you're considering your housing needs. But really, I think at the heart of it is, what does that home mean to you, mean to your family, mean to your community? And I think that's one of the most important considerations that you'll make. Ensure that part of your affordability calculation includes those other life goals. Do you want to spend as little on housing as possible so that you can do other things? Do you have family obligations, children going to school? You need to think about all of those sorts of issues when you're making that decision. When I first came to British Columbia in 1995, I rented for the first 15 years while I lived in British Columbia, and then my life circumstances changed and decided to purchase a condo unit in a building. I looked at single-family homes, but for me, I wanted to continue to live in the urban area in downtown Vancouver, and so owning a single-family home was certainly not an option because of availability, but also because of affordability. And so that condominium unit provided me with what my life goals were at the time. Building a relationship, continuing to build my career, living in an urban environment was really important, that I could click a lock and be able to travel, because traveling was also very important. And so it was coming to the realization, fitting in all of those life goals, affordability goals, financial goals, and lifestyle. And that's why condominium living appealed to me. There are obligations around condominium or strata living with respect to maintenance of the building, common areas. I did join the Strata Council and served as a term as its president. And so that really also taught me a lot about working together, learning more about maintaining buildings, and the importance of relationships with your neighbors, with members of the strata, because it's a collective that really has to work to maintain the building and ultimately protecting your assets. And so that's another part of that financial piece. And so strata living presents those kinds of challenges, but also presents those kinds of opportunities as well. It's important to acknowledge that advice about the real estate market for folks 30 years ago would be very different than that for younger generations today. I think the most important change is the lack of affordability. Many new home buyers need to rely on their family to provide for those down payments, because it is so difficult to save for those down payments in today's market. The reality is that income levels have not kept pace with the cost of living, especially in our urban centers, and home ownership can seem so far out of reach for many people. And that's why the importance of family and helping to provide for those down payments is really important. Once you have made the decision that home ownership is right for you, based on your life circumstances, your financial situation, then I think it's important to make that plunge, or take that plunge and get into the market sooner rather than later. That doesn't mean, though, making a rushed decision. We've all seen situations, especially recently with bidding wars. Don't fall so in love with a place that you're making those decisions outside of what you had determined was best for you. I think once that decision has been made and you've bookended the reasons for doing it, don't break those reasons just for the sake of having fallen in love with a particular home. Another one will come along. And I think it's important to make sure that you stay within those parameters and not stretch yourself too far simply to get into the market. When making a decision on your new home, you should consider a number of factors. Location. We all heard that location is one of the most important considerations. Is transportation nearby? Are you able to get to and from work to the grocery store with a car, or will you need a car? Is the location close to work? Do you like the neighborhood? Make sure you walk neighborhoods before you make decisions about where to buy. Are schools close by? For children that you have now or children that you plan to have in the future. The whole issue of buying new or buying an existing building. Are you prepared to consider renovation projects that may be necessary for an older home? Or are you interested in a new build where you don't have to make those kinds of investments? How much space do you require? And that could be for a growing household. Do you need a home with room to eventually accommodate more children? Are you looking after elderly parents? And do you need space to accommodate some of their needs as they age? There are a number of very useful guides that I would encourage you to consult. BC Housing publishes a helpful guide called Buying a Home in BC that can be found on our website. The BC Financial Services Authority, which regulates real estate professionals, also has great resources available. These resources will walk you through the entire buying process and cover things like new home construction and warranties, strata-specific information, the role of service providers such as inspectors, lenders, real estate professionals, and much more. Things to consider. If it's particularly an existing home or strata building, I would advise doing an inspection. There are a number of associations, and they can provide a list of home inspectors. Many times, your real estate advisor can provide advice on and provide references for home inspectors. When you're looking at buying in a strata, it's really important to have a conversation with some of the owners. I live in a strata, and more than helpful, more than willing to have a conversation with potential purchasers who are asked, well, what is life like in the strata? Is the building well maintained? When you're looking at buying a new home, what is the reputation of the builder? Does the builder come and back to do the necessary follow-up for warranty issues? And I can tell you, in a new home, there will always be follow-up that is needed as the home and the building become broken in and lived in. Strata living has become the main option in many of our large urban centers because of better land use and affordability. Is strata living right for you? It comes with those communal obligations around maintenance of common areas. Really important to read the minutes of the strata meeting, and if the minutes aren't very fulsome, that can also give you some hints. Strata minutes should contain information about how the building is maintained. One of the most important pieces of strata living are something called the depreciation report. And the depreciation report examines all of the major systems in a building, and this is particularly important for an existing building, that you have a good idea of what some of the potential repairs might be required coming up. Does the building need a new roof? What is the status of the contingency and special reserves that the strata has in order to pay for that? Or are you going to be faced with a significant special levy in order to maintain those? And so those are all really, really important considerations. Owning a home is likely the largest financial investment that we will ever make. And that investment is paid off over a long period of time. So it really is important to maintain that asset, and really what it's doing is protecting your investment. One of the ways to do that is through home warranty insurance, which applies to the purchase of new homes. But it's also important, if you're purchasing an existing home, that home may still have the balance of the warranty in place. And again, looking at the new home registry on the BC Housing website will let you know the date that the insurance went into place and how much insurance the time is left on that warranty. Buyers of new homes in British Columbia are protected by one of the strongest construction defect warranties in the business. It applies to purchases of new single-family and multifamily homes, and protects against construction defects for a specific period of time. This is a minimum of 2 years on labor and materials, 5 years on the building envelope, which is important in the British Columbia context and our climate, and 10 years on the structure of the home. Learning as much as you can about your home warranty insurance will help you get the most out of your coverage. You can find more information on home warranty insurance on our website. Another really important aspect of protecting your home is good maintenance practices. Regular maintenance is key to enhancing property values as well as curb appeal. It also protects your home warranty insurance coverage. Maintaining a building makes sure that your home warranty is not voided through the lack of maintenance. You will receive maintenance manuals, and it is important to read those and follow those. Warranty providers can in fact deny coverage if the building is not maintained according to those maintenance schedules. BC Housing does a series of maintenance matter workshops. You can go online and view those. They provide very practical information and tips around how to maintain your asset over the long term. Really important to do that for both new and existing homes, and the information there applies to both new and existing homes. So I would encourage you to have a look at those.